Okay, do it. Throw it. Hey guys, I just finished a video on a trip I made in Myanmar, and after creating that video I thought it would be useful to go into more detail about how I made it, and more importantly I think grading would be a good point to bring out. This isn't really for like advanced or for beginner, it's just stuff I guess that I thought would be interesting to share, so I guess it could be appealing to everyone or no one. I think the first thing to point out is the world around us, our everyday world around us is boring, it's uninspiring because we see it every day. So I think one really great way to be re-inspired by filming and to guess to improve your game is to bring your camera when you go traveling. Because, I mean, for me at least, when I go traveling, it's such a new experience, there's new places, new culture, new colors, things to see. And immediately I just feel like I want to capture it all, right? And that same feeling you wouldn't really get back home. So people will tell you, oh, just go shoot, go shoot. Well, I think another thing to add on top of that is go shoot something like on your next holiday or a weekend away or whatever. When I first started out filming just about 3 years ago, actually, I would go on like a weekend trip skiing or just a weekend to another city in a different town, and I'd bring the camera out maybe just with one lens, and I would then take it back, I put some clips together, add some music, and I learned so much that way. So that's the first thing I'd suggest. Onto the Myanmar video, which I've just created. One of the things, the challenges I set myself on this trip was I'm only allowed to take one camera, one lens, and every shot has to be static from a tripod. And the reason I did that is I really wanted to limit myself, to push myself to frame the shots to properly, and not to just be reliant on movement or zooming in, zooming out, really just to constrain myself and see if I could come up with something interesting from that. I had this super cheap and very compact tripod, which didn't cost more than about £30 or $50. And then to capture the sound, which I used for recording an interview at the end, I just used this cheap Rode, well, it's not that cheap, but this lapel mic, which I plugged through a long lead, long wire, straight into the back of the Canon 60D. When you approach the subject matter, like for example, a weaver, a person weaving, always think wide, mid, close. Wide as in standing back and getting a wide shot of them with their surroundings. Mid as in then coming in closer, perhaps at a different angle from the side. And then going in for a close-up, perhaps their hands weaving showing some details of that. That's pretty much a basic rule that everyone should follow, and I found really useful myself whenever I'm approaching a new subject matter. The other thing you might notice from the filming is it's all quite shallow depth of field, as in the background's quite blurred. So most of the shots were done at about f2. And how do you get that wide aperture, that low f-stop? Well, you have to get a prime lens. I think that's probably the way to go. I mentioned I had a 50mm prime, which was on a cropped body, which meant it was about 70, so it really wasn't that great. Probably a 35 would have been a bit better. Anyway, it's up to you to decide, but both those prime lenses would be super cheap to get. And one more point to mention is cutting on action, right? So if there's a scene, I think, where there is a lady and she's got these stems on a table and she's pulling off some strands within it, and I've made sure that when I've change the angle with which we're filming her, that I cut where her hand is moving off. And that makes the shot seamless, and it fools our eyes into thinking that perhaps there was two camera angles, where at least it connects those two scenes. And lastly, without sounding too cheesy, I think go with what you think is right, go with your heart, because you might wonder, well, what should I film, or what should I do, and where do I start? Well, actually, just something which you found interesting yourself, other people probably find interesting too. So I think that's probably a good place to start. Okay, those are a few tips for the filming side, and then quickly on to editing it. I didn't want to talk too much about editing itself. I wanted to talk more about grading the footage, because I think that might be probably more interesting to hear about. So I'm assuming now that you've brought in your clips, you had a wonderful holiday, sorry. You've brought in your clips and you've put them onto your timeline of your project. This could be in either Final Cut or Premiere, it doesn't really matter. And then you started to rearrange the clips according to, around the same subject matter or scene. And now it's time to grade your footage. So I think first thing to mention about grading in general is if you really want to get the most out of it, you should be shooting in a flat picture profile, meaning it's a picture profile which is desaturated and desharpened, etc., which would allow you more room in editing to play around with the exposure, the contrast, the colors, etc. What I used was CineStyle, which is a picture profile you can use on these sort of cheap Canon cameras which don't have C-Log. You could also use S-Log or any one of these ones for Sony, etc. You should just check on your camera, see which one it's got. If you don't want to do that, you can actually play around internally with the settings of your camera to get a look in camera, which you then can use to shoot with. And actually, a lot of people find that more useful than shooting on a flat picture profile. But that's another story, really. So let's go into how I would grade a clip in Final Cut, but equally applying to Premiere, I guess. First, here you see this woman here, she's cutting and preparing these cigars. So what I would first do is I would add a color correction effect. So this is the one for Final Cut. You add that on, it'll appear there. I would then add a plugin for adding a LUT, which in this case I'm using is the Color Finale Pro, which I think is about $100. It's a bit pricey. If you didn't want to use that, there's a free one. I'll link you in the description. It's LUT Loader or something like that. And then lastly, you might want to add in some sharpness. So we'll stack that at the bottom. Now the next thing I would do is to determine the look of my film. I would do that. I would probably take a series of clips that I liked, that I felt gave a summary of the different styles and different colors represented in the film, and then I would go about throwing on colors and on LUTs. LUTs, by the way, are lookup tables, but essentially it's kind of like a Instagram filter you might use. One looks a bit more vintage, one looks a bit warmer, one looks a bit cooler. They're based on old film stock by like Kodak or Fuji, and they really add a certain look and style to your filming. But for the layman, it's basically sort of a bit like an Instagram filter. So we're going to play around with them now, the LUTs. And what I was saying was these series of example clips are what I'm going to practice to see which one I like. For the purposes of time, I'm not going to play around with them too much. I'm just going to show you the one I used. I'll show you one or two. So here is the place where you can find the LUTs. Here is example. So I could apply this LUT, which is crazy strong. Let's bring that down to 50%. Here, I don't particularly like this. I think this might have been the one I used. There. So you see it's made the skin tone, I guess, a bit orange, and it's kind of desaturated and made the blue in the background and the green here look a bit different. We'll compare them. You see? Anyway, you would choose your LUT here. I'll link you to one that I used in my video in the description. It's from a pack, I can't remember the name, but this is the original, this is the one I used. And here is it on, and here's off. So it's brought about quite a nice look to the piece. If we try it on another shot, let's see how that looked. So I threw it onto this one too. There's off, there's on. You see the greens go a little bit more sort of faded and like a 70s photo. So that was the look I was going for. And then on this, perhaps on this girl here, we can see that on and off. So that was without. And it's a lot cleaner in a way. And now on, so we've brought this sort of look across all of the clips. Now, once you've chosen that, then what you could do is you would go to Command C, and then you would find your other clips that you wanted to place it on. For example, these ones have nothing on them, they have no LUT. You would highlight them all and then press Command Shift V, and then you'd be able to paste them all onto the new clips. So if I did that, then yeah, it will start to get working there, you see. So anyway, yeah, that was a bit of an insight into how I do my grading. I hope that wasn't totally useless. It wasn't really planned. It was just to give you a bit of an idea. And I'll try to link you as much as I can in the description. Right, guys, well, thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful. I guess to summarize, I mean, if you're a bit bored by filming, or you want to get into it more or whatever, I'd say go out and take it on your next holiday, take it on your next weekend away, and find something fun to film, to shoot, make a little video, and let that be a way for you to learn and to improve your skills. And maybe the better you get, the more you want to do it, and the more, you know, it's a full circle thing. So it's a feedback loop. That's what I was trying to say. Right, guys, well, cheers for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.